I've wanted to review this movie for a very long time, and now I'm finally gonna do it. This was one of the first animes I've ever watched, whereas before I was watching Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! And maybe a little bit of Yu Yu Hakusho here and there, but this one right here was the first animated anime movie that I've ever seen. And I want to talk about it because I think there's a lot of interesting ideas that are explored in this film. And I want to make a quick disclaimer and say that I'm not going to be comparing this to the 1927 version of Metropolis because I really don't want to open that can of worms for this video. I'd rather do that for its own video. Instead, I'm going to be talking about this movie purely from a nostalgic standpoint. In other words, did this movie age well? What is this movie trying to say? And overall, is it worth watching in the year 2024? The movie begins by establishing that there is something called a ziggurat. I do want to put a pin on this broader, finer point here, but a ziggurat in ancient Mesopotamia was a place for worship. Mainly priests and certified holy peoples could only enter these ziggurats, as it was believed that the gods lived in these structures.
I never heard of a ziggurat before. What does it mean?
Who knows?
Metropolis plays around with class analysis. It does a really fantastic job of establishing that there is a class antagonism between the rich and the poor. However, the way it does this is really interesting because it is centered around a debate as to whether or not robots are to be recognized as full citizens.
We robots are assigned to specific zones based on occupation. We're strictly forbidden to operate outside of our areas. And that robot was not authorized to work at surface level. He's supposed to be underground.
Yeah, but who are those guys? They look like fascists.
The Marduk. They were a political party, but evolved into a kind of vigilante group to calm anti-robot sentiment. Today, their main occupation is terminating robots which are malfunctioning or breaking the law.
This is a really interesting scenario because it tells me that these Marduk people are above the law. With a monopoly on violence, it seems like this fascist group has taken matters into their own hands, and that's because the leader of this fascist group is Rock. I love Rock. He's one of my favorite characters, and that's because he is portrayed as a fascist little boy with daddy issues. Because throughout the movie, Rock is consistently trying to seek the approval of his father, but he's never gonna get that approval.
Yes, Father.
You idiot! I'm not your father, understand? I found you during the last war. You were an orphan, so I took you in. You're dismissed.
Yes.
If that isn't a fascist with daddy issues, well, I don't know what is. To me, this dynamic between Rock and his supposed father, who is Duke Red, is absolutely fascinating. You see, Duke Red is not a politician, he functions more of that of a CEO. But as a CEO, he's very close friends with the president of Metropolis. Because even though the president is the one who governs over the state of class rule over Metropolis, Duke Red has a significant influence over Metropolis because of its relationship with the president. And yes, this will also be important later. But keep in mind for now that Rock and the fascist Marduk serve as Duke Red's little private militia, and that Duke Red has Rock around his finger. It is almost kinda sad in a way, but it is rather telling that fascists reputably serve the billionaire class. Now getting to our main characters. Shinsaku-ban is the private detective from Japan who brought his nephew? They're looking for somebody named Dr. Laughton who uses real human organs to create synthetic humans. The police in Metropolis are too damn busy paying attention to petty crime that is committed by robots, so they are assigned a robot that doesn't even have a human name.
My serial number's 803DRP DM4973C. Nice to meet you.
Metropolis is an interesting city for many reasons, one of which is that it is a capitalist society that works under the premise of automation. What this means is that the capitalist class has necessitated replacing the human working class with the robot. And with robots serving the function of the working class, there's really nothing that the capitalist class has to adhere to when it comes to workers' rights. Because not only are robots segregated, they are seen as less than human.
Where do you think we should start looking? 803? What was it?
DRP DM 4973C.
Thanks, Astro Boy.
Listen here, don't you have an easier name?
We're not allowed human names. It's considered inappropriate for a robot. They feel it would infringe upon the rights of humans.
I know all about that, but come on. Numbers? Oh, I know. Starting now, your name is Pero.
Hey, that's a dog's name, isn't it?
That's right. I used to have a dog named Pero a while back. He was a good dog, too.
Yeah, in order for Shinsakuban to even interact with his robot partner, he has to give his robot partner an affectionately animal name. Because giving a robot a human name is, for some weird reason, considered taboo in this very innovative society. Meanwhile, Duke Red meets up with Dr. Laughton, who has mashed potatoes for hair and mustache.
They say your specialty is mixing real organs with synthetic.
No, that's absolutely illegal. I never use human body parts. They don't last very long anyway, you know. Quick fix at best. She's 100% synthetic, much better. Every component made by hand.
I don't know how much of that is true, if he's just trying to cover his ass from a lawsuit. But either way, Duke Red is here for one specific reason. He is commissioning Dr. Laughton to make his daughter. After Duke Red takes off, it's then revealed that Dr. Laughton has an ulterior motive.
I'm not giving you to anyone. Nah, not a chance. I'll put the finishing touches on now. Then we'll escape together and leave Metropolis far behind.
Feel free to use your imagination with this one, folks. Then Daddy's boy, Rock, kills Dr. Laughton and then starts shooting at the girl that Dr. Laughton is creating.
Oh gods, give me courage. Give me the strength to protect my father from the evil of machines.
I am my own daddy's waifu pillow, you degenerate. And almost like a blink of an eye, we're given a foreshadow of a character named Atlas, who will be more relevant later in the movie. But for now, Atlas is around to see Dr. Laughton's building get blown up. For some reason, this awakens the girl that Dr. Laughton is trying to make. I don't know why, I don't know how this works, but whatever. I think this next bit is really interesting because it shows robots serving the role of firefighters. And this is the first time where the supposed robot question comes into fruition as a theme for this movie. I want to spend this time exploring that for a little bit. Outside of the context of capitalism, automation actually sounds like a good idea. This would require the minimalization of the need for humans to work. Humans wouldn't have to worry about poor working conditions or working so many hours that it occupies our entire week. However, this movie does show this context being portrayed in a capitalist society, as the means of production in Metropolis is holistically privatized. Which means that the human working class don't really have a safety net for the system that they've toiled so long under. And since the human working class has been deemed obsolete by the ruling class, robots have taken that role, and the human working class has become rather antagonistic towards robots. And I think that this is, in a way, a form of false consciousness, which I'm gonna explore a little bit later in this video. Anyway, the next bit isn't super important as Shinsakuban and his nephew dangerously break into the burning building to try to save anyone or anything. Kimichi finds the girl and tries to save her, while Dr. Laughton is found by Shinsakuban and is pointing towards a mysterious notebook. This will also be important later. And unfortunately, the burning is so intense that they all fall through the floor and they are separated. The next day, Rock is kissing Daddy's ass again.
There were several international arrest warrants out for him, so whatever he was doing there, it was a danger to the state. Now that danger has been eliminated. What's wrong, Father? Did you have some dealings with Laughton? He was not to be trusted.
Just shut up and get out! I need to be alone.
We will be united one day, Daddy. There's this one robot who does the thankless job of collecting trash. What an awesome robot. And he encounters Kimichi and the girl while the girl does this thing. Meanwhile, Rock is looking for the remains of this girl that his daddy clearly loves more than him. Mr. Detective-ass Shinsakuban is not in the least concerned that a fascist is looking for his nephew. Seems like the robot has more concern than he does.
He's Duke Red's right-hand man.
Really? Duke Red? Is he part of this Marduk thing? What does he want with a bunch of thugs?
Duke Red founded the Marduk Party. It's his group. Of course, there are no official ties, nothing traceable, but he puts up the money for all of their operations. It's what you call a public secret. Everyone knows about it.
No matter what, a criminal always returns to the scene of the crime. Okay, it's an old saying, but I like old sayings, eh?
If you're rested, we should continue our search for your nephew now.
Sorry, Kimichi, doesn't seem like your uncle loves you enough. This scene is really wholesome because it not only takes a break from all of this extra politically dense nuance, but it also gives us a chance to be introduced to the girl who is probably the main set piece of this entire film. See, because she was created in a lab, her entire personality is a blank slate. She hasn't had time to be brainwashed by her father. So far, the first and only interaction that she's had with humans is with Kimichi, who is this teenage boy. And what seems like a really simple scene that has very little to add, this is actually a really big and important developing scene for this character, because she's establishing the importance of having a personality, of having a sense of person, a sense of self. And not to jump ahead with this movie or anything, but I don't feel like she would have gotten that chance if she was taken in by her father, who commissioned her to be built in the first place. Okay, I hope you got your wholesome fill because this next scene is absolutely fucking horrifying. Duke Red meets up with a team of mad scientists in this fucking tower, and this tower is literally some of the most shocking things I've ever seen in all of anime. I just want to take a moment and just acknowledge that this use of CGI in this anime is absolutely beautiful. I think they really did a fantastic job with this scene overall.
There will be no impact on humans, but robots working at surface level may exhibit erratic performance.
Wait a minute, what was that about the robots?
Radiation out solar terminated negative 80 seconds. Confirmed.
We will reach point R in 5 seconds.
Air perfusion reaction. Commencing countdown.
4 seconds. 3 seconds. 2 seconds. 1 second. Homotenium fusion achieved.
What the absolute fuck was the point of that even? Like, seriously? This is an interesting metaphor for systemic violence because this has been established that it affects robots disproportionately so, legitimizing the violence committed by the fascist Marduk. Since the Marduk's reactionary role is to wipe out the robots, and Duke Red is financing this right-wing militia, this is capitalist terrorism, literally by design.
People will be in an uproar about this, but that's how it is. You now hold the power of the gods in the palm of your hand.
And all it's really doing is repeating the violence over and over again. This is such a weapon of mass destruction that it actually can give Duke Red so much power above the state.
It's a new weapon, Mr. President. Revolutionary. It creates sunspots, which bathe the Earth in electromagnetic radiation. At higher levels, it could change the balance of power.
The President's relationship in this scene comes at a really interesting cost because he's been friends with Duke Red up until this point, but he's rather hesitant in immediately arresting Duke Red. They're attempting to make a public relations move to attempt to smear Duke Red as an attempt to appeal to broader populist movements. Because right now, they are very afraid of people uprising against the state, because the state is failing to prove its legitimacy. But as we will see, corruption has already planted its seeds deep within to the state's bosom.
Will the military support us?
Some units are leaning toward Duke Red, but I can handle them.
You don't have to worry about a thing, Mr. President.
So we'll leak stories to the press. That'll turn the focus of the public on Duke Red. And when there's enough resentment built up against him, we'll arrest him for treason. If that requires the military, you have my approval. Understood?
Another interesting quirk is that Daddy's boy here has clearance to go to the lower levels of Metropolis, down to Zone 2. Whereas the international detective here has to get authorization from the government to go down there.
Why don't you wait here? I'll return to headquarters to file a missing persons report. That will allow us to enter the lower levels to search for your nephew.
I agree.
Hey, you! Little old for petty theft, aren't you?
How much is it?
This is where hierarchy really comes into play here, because Zone 2 is where the power plants are. This is where all the robots tend to do most of the labor, but not all of it, of course. Zone 3 is where Kimichi and the robot girl is at, and that's why Rock is trying to get lower into the sewer. Rock has a bit of a vendetta that is a little bit too violent for his own fascist buddies.
Don't do that! You'll hit the equipment! You can do a lot of damage!
This is to say that in a fascist world, they will at some point all eat each other alive. So yeah, this is a scene where Rock is trying to kill Kimichi and the robot girl, and it's really fucking sad because this particular trash robot does the unthinkable. That robot helps Kimichi and the girl escape by just having them stored within his bin. It's a really good scene that I think often gets overshadowed by these broader political narratives because this is showing a human side of the robot. In order for someone to do something so selfless like this, they need to have some sort of sentience or the ability to express compassion and empathy, especially within the dire and urgent context that is at play here, which means that this robot is not just intelligent, artificially speaking, but he is also emotionally mature, artificially speaking. Especially for a robot who was specifically designed to collect trash, it's just really cool that the robot is capable of doing more than just collect trash. And I think that this is the film's way of trying to get the audience to express empathy and compassion towards robots as we go through the plot of the film. Because let's face it, this girl is not just a robot, but she is an idealized version of what a superhuman would be like. With her blonde hair and blue eyes, and having been artificially created, this is a symbol of what someone with some kind of major political stronghold on the political system would create specifically for his own personal motives. Of course, that would be Duke Red and Dr. Laughton for majorly different reasons, but sure, okay. And of course, there has to be a sequence where Rock actually kills the robot, because, I mean, Duke Red just absolutely hates robots as it is, and the robot did whatever it could to make sure these characters were safe. It's a really gruesome scene, but I think it's executed really well. If you've ever watched The Going Mary's funeral, it's a very similar feeling in this scene. But yeah, this is your typical chase scene, and it goes on for a while. I will say the animation's pretty good, but I really could do without this scene, especially considering that it does pander for a very long time. It almost feels like Scooby-Doo in a way, where everyone's just kind of running down the different hallways and the different doors and whatnot. This footage you're watching is fast-forwarded by 400% and it's still going, like holy shit. But at one point, they eventually crash and they go to the sewer again.
They just aren't here.
That's not an acceptable answer. Cover the whole area.
I have some issues with the following segments, but I do find some teachable moments within them, so I'm going to discuss them anyway. These characters are the rebels, and qualitatively speaking, they are left-wing. Atlas here is among them, and this is where we begin to explore these characters more thoroughly. Among the rebels, some of the characters are rather bloodthirsty, but Atlas is only concerned with one thing, and that is social clout. Atlas believes that Kenichi is a journalist, and that Kenichi can write a good story for him and his group. This means that everything that this group ultimately cares about is aesthetics.
Let the world know how we're treated in Metropolis. Tell them we're just trying to get a fair deal.
This is no time for genteel newspaper articles with our pictures in fancy uniforms. This is life and death.
Yes, And the uniform that I'm going to die in is the uniform of the revolution that will change this world.
Also, I just need to point this out, the poster in the back that reads, "The law of the revolution. Sickness is the mirror of health. Discretion is for the proletariat. Prejudice is for the bourgeoisie." Yeah, my friends, I tried to look into this quote a little bit to see if I could find the root of it. The word Che is spray painted on the bottom, leaving me to think that it might be something that Che Guevara would have said, but even among my searches with that name, I couldn't find anything, so to me, this is just a phrase that I think the set designer thought sounded Marxist.
What does ziggurat mean?
Uh-oh, he's asking the thing.
It's a kind of tower they used to build in the ancient city of Babylon to show everyone how powerful they were. The Tower of Babel is the most famous one of all, and everyone knows what happened to that. The king's arrogance angered the gods, and they smote him down, and it destroyed the tower. History repeats itself. The same thing will happen to Duke Red, his Marduks, but this time it won't be the gods who will bring about the change. It'll be us.
I fucking hope so, Atlas. In other news, Robot Girl learned how to spell Kenichi's name in English, and she came up with her own name too.
I think we're on...
Tima.
What?
Tima. That's what my name is.
So you're good. You're starting to remember.
There's nothing to remember, doofus. Her RAM just started working properly. Meanwhile, Atlas and Steve Bloom are striking some kind of deal in the sewer?
Everything has been arranged. The Marduk Parade is the final event of the Ziggurat celebration. That's when you can crush them and storm the Ziggurat. You'll be heroes. President Boone will make a formal statement announcing the arrest of Duke Red for treason. Then it'll be a simple matter of invoking the right of command to place the military under President Boone's control.
Yeah, the president is trying to astroturf the rebellious movement here, as having a relationship with Duke Red is becoming a conflict of interest for him. But how does our revolutionary boy Atlas respond to all of this?
After years of hiding, our day in the light has finally come. Our party will get the recognition it deserves.
Yup, he only gives a shit about his own reputation. This is about social clout, and it has nothing to do with any revolutionary goals or potential. Other than the really good monologue with the Tower of Babel and the definition of ziggurat, Atlas is kind of a flavor text character when it comes to class analysis and socialist theory and praxis. When I first saw this movie when I was 11 years old, this sounded quite profound, but now that I'm a 32-year-old anarcho-communist, this sounds kind of gibberish to me. Not that the analysis is wrong necessarily, it's just that in terms of socialist worldviews, this is the closest thing we get from Atlas that is even revolutionary in the first place. Because it serves the movie more than it does teaching the audience about dissecting and questioning hierarchy in the first place. Besides, Atlas is just in general a very awful character.
Hey, what are you doing? Stop that!
We have to be careful. All robots must hide themselves now. A revolution is at hand.
What you say? Revolution?
Shit's about to get real, y'all. Are you ready for the motherfucking revolution? Because it's about to throw down, baby. I want you to take a look at this dialogue between Pero and Atlas, and I want you to take a notice as to what Atlas's response is to Pero's rather interesting question.
Why must humanity always resort to violence as the only means of settling their differences?
There's no simple answer to that question. Yes, I agree that we're a violent race controlled by emotions. They're at war within us, and we can do nothing but move forward and search for peace through destruction. If we deny their existence, then we cannot survive, and without emotions, then we are nothing.
I never liked this scene, even when I was a kid and I wasn't really politically educated like I am now. None of what Atlas is really saying has anything to do with robots and their role under capitalism. The dialogue with the Tower of Babel makes sense because power will corrupt so badly that it will at some point collapse. But in this scene, Atlas is confronted by a robot, albeit a detective robot that works for law enforcement. But as we saw throughout the movie, there are plenty of examples of robots who are working class. Plenty of which are willing to make sacrifices for humans. And since we're talking about humans and having emotions and whatnot, I think we've seen the most amount of emotional display coming from robots in this movie rather than humans. It's really sad because during the burning of Dr. Laughton's building, we talked rather plenty about how robots are being subjugated by the system and society for replacing the working class with automation. And this analysis does in fact have roots within socialist ways of thinking, considering the fact that the problem with this system is not robots or automation, but the privatization of the means of production, which is what is rendering these people without any kind of safety net or infrastructure. But here, we have this fucking angsty kid who has nothing really of any importance to contribute to any kind of class analysis. It's almost embarrassing because Pero is asking Atlas a rather sophisticated question that can't really be answered in binaries. But as he tries to answer, he resorts to this blind, unfounded rant about how violence is part of human nature, and that we are all just driven by emotion. Maybe you're driven by emotion, I don't know. And I guess we all are in some way. I just wish this scene was handled better because this is the last time we see Atlas, so we don't see him go through any kind of arc. Other than not being a privatized militia, there's really no difference between Atlas and the Marduk Party. Because while the Marduk Party also hates robots and wish to destroy robots, it's for their own reasons, whereas Atlas, he unfortunately doesn't have anything to differentiate himself from the fascists, which is kind of messed up that this movie has to require us as the audience to play horseshoe theory with it. And the last time I checked, horseshoe theory is horseshit. Anyway, jokes aside, this results in Atlas doing this. I really wish I could like this scene, but the way it comes off is rather adventurous rather than any serious approach to revolution. And it's unearned because they have the same prejudice that they claim the bourgeoisie have. Because remember, this is an astroturfed riot. This is a planned riot by the state itself. Because remember, this uprising is meant to serve the public image of the state. It's a matter of checks and balances, you see. It's gonna hold Duke Red accountable, the fascist Marduk Party is gonna be dismantled.
Huh? Wait!
Traitor! You've gone to the other side!
Perhaps a traitor to you, Mr. President, but not to history.
Yeah, that resulted in the fucking assassination of the president of Metropolis. And thanks to false consciousness against the scapegoated robots, the Marduk Party, Duke Red, and his fascist military puppets committed a fucking coup with a stronghold on the state. Shit's getting real, y'all. Anyway, Rock is still after Blood, trying to kill Kenichi and Tima. Then Daddy shows up and is wondering why Rock is trying to kill his robot daughter. There's this really messed up scene where he just pulls off Rock's armband, and it's just so funny to watch the expression on his face. Then the International Detective Shinsakuban tries to make an arrest on Duke Red, but he has like no authority at all. Or at least Duke Red doesn't seem to give a shit, because Duke Red takes off with Tima anyway. Now, I have seen a lot of people review this movie, but I've never seen anybody truly analyze this scene.
I'm here to see Superintendent Notari.
He's been transferred, and his replacement hasn't been named yet. You'll have to come back another time.
Then maybe you can help me. You see, there's been a mistake. The Marduks have taken my...
Old man! You know the procedure! Handle it through your own embassy!
So imagine, hypothetically, in our real world, if, say, a Proud Boy commits a hate crime and you were to go to the police to report that hate crime, and the moment you mention the Proud Boys under your breath, a Proud Boy shows up behind you and it's like,
Old man! You know the procedure! Handle it through your own embassy!
Yeah, that's wild, and I feel like we're not too far away from this becoming a reality, unfortunately. After all, cops and clan go hand in hand. But still, look how far we've come throughout this story. We begin the movie by learning that Duke Red is a private entity, a capitalist CEO, who is friends with the president of Metropolis. We find out about the Marduks, this fascist group, whom Duke Red not only founded, but also has a daddy's boy running the show. At the beginning of the movie, Duke Red stated that he has no interest in getting involved in politics in his career, but it can be speculated that he said this primarily to ease his relationship with the president of Metropolis. So after he lobbies to create what is called the Ziggurat, this global fucking weapon, and it becomes a national security risk, he works from the people who are on the inside coordinating with him on a military fucking coup. Which is how we arrived to this point today, a transfer of power after a violent military coup, where a fascist Marduk motherfucker can tell an old man to get the fuck out. And of course, the pig who is witnessing this is just complicit in this confrontation. Because, again, cops and clan go hand in hand. It is really uncanny to witness even the smallest inkling of acceptance of reactionary behavior committed by the state and those around us in society can lead to just full-blown, unmasked, unadulterated fascism, where once our ability to question authority is taken away from us, what left do we really have to fight back?
You know what I think? Who really gives a damn about the Ziggurat anyway? As a matter of fact, all those Marduks can go to hell for all I care! All of them!
Meanwhile, Tima is absolutely obsessed with Kenichi. Perhaps it's parental. Perhaps because Kenichi was the first person that Tima ever saw that Kenichi is so significant to her. Tima's given a letter who is pretending to be Kenichi, and it's actually Rock all along, who wants so desperately to meet up with Tima for obvious reasons.
Do you know where Kenichi is? If you do, you have to take me to him.
It's uncanny. I'd never guess you were a robot. Your resemblance to a human is really amazing. Your hair, your skin, the craftsmanship, it's almost perfect. I guess my dad truly knows how to choose a mad scientist, because that Dr. Laughton was a real find.
Scientist? What are you talking about?
Well, you being a robot and everything.
I'm not a robot. That's not true at all.
Really? So what are you then? A human?
Yeah, this tracks so much with fascists and the fetishization of everything that they hate, including trans people, surprisingly enough. Fascists will hate us, but then in the red states, fascists will statistically jack off to us the most. Which is so telling, in fact, that in order to fetishize somebody, you have to dehumanize somebody. That really does say a lot about not just Rock, but just the fascist mentality of how fascists view other humans around them. Anyway, Rock does what I can only conclude is knocking out Tima. I don't know what to really call this. Like tasing? Shutting her down? I don't know. Rock begins to perform what is, I guess, robot surgery, and for some reason he has this picture of Duke Red and his former daughter in his bag. I'm not gonna lie, that is really creepy. And before he could do anything, Shinsaku-ban turns off the light and beats that fascist to the fucking ground, baby. Go home to daddy, fascist boy. Okay, he didn't actually say that, but he should have said that. That would have been a great one-liner for him. I don't know if it was ever established that Shinsaku-ban was some kind of engineer, but he was able to resurrect Tima from, I guess, the slumber that she was in, and it makes a really wretched noise.
Where is Kenichi?
Well, to be honest, I'm not really sure. The only way I'm going to find him is if you help me.
Help you?
I've got this feeling that he's locked up somewhere inside that structural behemoth, the Ziggurat. And by accessing the Ziggurat's mainframe data network, I'm hoping that you can help pinpoint Kenichi's location.
Can I really do all that?
Translation: The fuck if I know? I'm not gonna lie, I have no idea how any of this shit works. And even if it's supposed to be somewhat logically tied to like science in science fiction, it makes no sense. But through all of this, they eventually find out that...
Well?
I know where Keiichi is. He's in the tower.
I knew it all the time!
Meanwhile, the Marduks are literally given surveillance equipment to track down where Shinsakuban is.
I see, so it's you again, is it? You had better explain yourself before I have you thrown in jail.
You're asking the wrong man. Back off! Why don't you ask your son what he's doing in his spare time?
Oh, snap! That is such a sick burn right there.
One thing is obvious, that Dr. Laughton was involved. And his murder was probably instigated by both of you, to make sure she'd be kept secret.
Clearly, Shinsakuban knows way too much, so he is being detained by a fascist capitalist dictator at this point. We're taken to a throne room, which a lot of shit happens in this scene, so I'm just gonna summarize it all. First major thing that happens is we see Kenichi, and thank goodness he is at least alive in all of this mayhem.
Keiichi, are you alright? You've got to wake up. Come on now. Please, Keiichi.
Keiichi! Keiichi?
You coward! What have you done to my nephew?
Relax, old man. You'll hurt yourself. He'll be okay. We just had to shut him up for a while, that's all.
Keiichi? Keiichi?
I'm going to file a formal protest with my embassy. This is a direct violation of international law.
And as justified as that is, what does Shinsakuban really think that's going to do? These people who he is dealing with are politically far too powerful to really be checked in the checks and balances. They're not really able to be corrected here. Too much power has already been coercively consolidated. Speaking of consolidated power, Duke Red explains to Tima her purpose for being created as a robot, to serve as the leader of the whole world. She was created in a way to be a puppet for Duke Red's dictatorship, because clearly Duke Red doesn't want to be the successor to the former president that he assassinated. No, he wants entirely to hold that power and influence without any potential backlash. Theoretically, Tima, being the robot, would not question this role, and in fact take it unconditionally. But this plan of Duke Red entirely backfires because Tima has developed a sense of autonomy, a friendship with Kenichi. And her friend was hurt. She feels empathy for him, compassion rather. She's clearly not interested in taking over the world. With Duke Red trying to convince Tima to rule the world is absolutely contradictory. It's absolutely contradictory to his purpose conceiving the robot, especially for an assigned role like this.
And when that happens, all your emotions and memories will be completely erased.
And where exactly did you get that kind of information?
I'll have you know I consider myself a detective.
Also, Rock disguised himself as one of Duke Red's servants. I don't really feel like unpacking this, so can I just have a freebie on this one? And he's all like, Daddy, you deserve to be on the throne. And I love so much how Rock pulls out a gun, and this Marduk motherfucker pulls out a gun too on his own fucking hog buddies that he once was accomplices with. It's so fucking real. Anyway, Tima's on the floor, Rock is on the floor passed out, and Kenichi regains consciousness, thankfully. Tima gets up, and then she realizes that she's a robot because of this gunshot wound. And I don't know what exactly it is with this scene. It's like she just snaps, and she just goes full self-destruct mode right here.
This is punishment for toying with robots.
The computer network and Tima's memories and emotions have been integrated. She's beginning to lose her mind.
And so God's wrath descended upon the Tower of Babel.
What I also find really interesting about this scene is that this is absolutely the manifestation of how cannibalistic the whole ideology of fascism truly is.
Destruction of the human race will begin through irradiation and the use of multiple weapon systems. This will be complete in 17 hours, 27 minutes.
Did you hear that, Duke Red? The superhuman that you created is saying it doesn't need us anymore!
This whole scene, no, this whole movie is fascism put into practice. What happens when you play out the whole ideology in the first place? When you consolidate so much power that goes uncorrected, that it can no longer be corrected, it's only gonna bite your ass back. It is quite literally going to eat itself alive. This is clearly where the movie was headed the whole time, like, without a shadow of a doubt. I also really like seeing these robots here rise up against Duke Red. It was like so satisfying. And I guess Rock has just finally had it, so he's just like, if I can't have my daddy, then you know what? No one can. No one can have my daddy. He presses this self-destruct button. And I love this. I absolutely love it. I will not play the song that plays during this moment. I will get a copyright strike if I do. So I'm trying not to do that. But this scene is amazing. This scene is the epitome of the phrase, fascism is capitalism in decline. Look at this. Look at the wanton destruction that you are seeing before you. This is what a capitalist society is. It is mutated into something that is not even human. So fucking alien that it cannot sustain human life, even as impressive as these structures look. And it becomes really clear that the context of a ziggurat, especially in this movie, is meant to portray a nationalistic facade to give some kind of legitimacy to the tyrannical fascist rule over Metropolis. And I also feel a deep pit in my heart for Tima, because she was brought into this world with a specific role in mind by her creators. She only wanted a friend. She wanted Kenichi. That was her goal. That was her everything. And now she's on the grasp of being dead.
I'm Kenichi. Who are you? Who are you? No. Listen, when you're talking about yourself, you say I. That's how it works.
But unfortunately, she does lose her grasp and she falls to her death. And thus is the death of the society that is Metropolis. What once stood as the claim for future innovations for all the leaders and scientists throughout the world, an empire justifiably falls. Friends, the first time I saw this movie was when I was a pre-teenager. My cousin got me this movie for Christmas, among a couple other DVDs like Tokyo Godfather and Porco Rosso. This was the early 2000s, right when this movie came out and was localized to the US. When I first saw this movie all these years ago, I was absolutely floored with the quality of the animation of this movie. It's a very good looking movie. At the time, I didn't know about the historical context of the 1927 film that was heavily censored by Nazis, and still some of the movie is lost media today. And I wasn't really acutely aware of Osamu Tezuka's manga that directly inspired this film. However, I wish I was able to pick up on some of the themes that this movie was exploring in my heyday. I don't know if that means this movie should have watered down a lot of these ideas, but I think as an adult in my 30s today, looking back on it, I think this movie does a fantastic job exploring all of the themes that we talked about today, with a few exceptions, like Atlas and the Revolutionaries.
I think I'd like to stay here for a while if that's okay with you.
I'm sorry, I know I'm trying to conclude the video, but why Kenichi? You're hanging out with robots in a foreign country that you've never been in before, especially a foreign country that has literally just collapsed. What the fuck is your uncle gonna say to your parents, whom I assume is one of his siblings? Sorry guys, it seems like your kid wanted to stay and hang out with the robots. I'm gonna go back to Japan and do what I do in Japan. Anyway, to wrap this up, yes, I would recommend you go and watch this movie. Buy it, watch it, stream it, wherever you get your movies, and definitely check out the original 1927 film and the Osamu Tezuka manga, which I will cover both in the future. But anyway, thanks for listening to me rant about this anime.